Welcome back to Blumira Briefings, your weekly download of the top headlines and trends for your security practice. We've got 3 on deck this week: a copycat worm chewing through the NPM registry, a BitLocker 0-day for anyone who's able to walk right up to your laptop, and Patch Tuesday that truly earned its name. Plus a extra surprise announcement, but no spoilers. Let's get to the news first. First up, researchers flag mini Shai-Hulud this week, a supply chain attack on the Node Package Manager registry, named either after the worm that hit NPM last fall but smaller in scope, or the sandworms of Arrakis. No way to know for sure. The malicious packages pose as legitimate crypto and financial libraries, and once a developer installs one, the backdoor quietly pulls credentials, environment variables, and cryptographic keys off of the workstation. For MSPs, this means potential downstream access to every client whose environment that dev touches. So, Jake, what's the immediate advice for teams that are pulling packages from NPM right now?
Yeah, so just before we get into any immediate actions or anything like that, I just want to say that we need to take a step back here. This is bigger than NPM itself specifically. This is like any open source project, any open source code. We put a lot of safeguards into making sure valid 2FA needs to be passed and signatures are correct and correct CI pipelines are being run. But unfortunately, we're seeing a lot of attackers be able to get around those and around them, not in even workarounds, but just ways they're finding ways to validate and to pass all of those checks and put in code that's malicious. So that's going to be my first tip, is just you should trust the people that are submitting code, but don't always trust their code. That's where the biggest gap is right now. Is we do a lot of whole verification with who published the code, but we don't do a whole lot of verification with what the code itself actually does. So that's going to be my first recommendation, is just kind of take a step back before you do any updates or pull anything down. Just see if you can do a quick audit or find a way to review the code or review changes that are going on to make sure that nothing malicious is being entered. Next thing I want to say is have a good plan going into responding to an incident like this. You can't just run an update, get updates from a latest commit or something like that, and find out it's malicious and then roll back and then you're good to go. You need to kind of assume that you're compromised. And it's kind of like what we were saying last week, is just because you put in a patch after the patch is available, this thing could have been abused in the wild for 30 days and you might not have known it. Someone could have compromised you, did what they needed to do make a backdoor, and then you patch over that, but they've already got their backdoor. So that's kind of the same idea here, is just because you roll back a commit or roll back to a known good version doesn't mean that attacker wasn't able to get in there and get what they needed. So make sure you just have an incident response plan ready to go, so you know what to respond to, what to restart, what to reset, passwords, API tokens, SSH keys. Have all of that ready to go in a plan, so you're not wondering what they could have had access to, what your plan is into remediation and all of that. Just have that ready to go. And next thing too is you can do a lot of safeguards with those API tokens, SSH keys. You can just if you think somebody's getting access to them, see what you can do to put limits on those keys, either budget limits, so people can't just run away with spending a whole bunch of budget on a key somewhere. See about because we know that those things, they're after those things. So imagine a world where somebody stole those keys, and think about the things you can do to safeguard those, even if they are stolen. The next thing I want to go over is auditing your local tooling directories. These are the hidden directories that VS Code, Claude, and Cursor build. They're the hidden ones because they start with the dot in front of them, so .vs code, .claude, and .cursor. These things are typically ignored with git ignore and all of that, and they're rarely scrutinized. So and this is where we're seeing actually a lot of malicious things go on, is in those those hidden folders. So those things now, unfortunately, it means a little bit more work for us, but now those things also need to be reviewed and audited with the same rigor as regular production infrastructure. So these typically will offer silent automatic execution every time you open a project. So that's why they're good for attackers, because they can kind of hang out and silently create persistence. Basically, every time you open a new session, they're gonna reference those those folders, and then they're gonna get you again. So unfortunately, we got to start auditing those spots. And then the last tip I have is pin your dependencies, use lock files, and actually review what changes you update. I've heard a lot of people of we're moving into this time where we need to pin a dependency at a certain point and then wait a certain amount of time. Maybe you have a certain policy or procedure now. That's something else you could think about, is a certain policy or procedure that has you lock a dependency at a certain point, and then when an update does come down, you wait until a proper audit can be done, or you wait like 2 or 3 weeks, or maybe like a month, or maybe longer. I mean, it all depends on your environment. But maybe you can wait some time before you get those latest updates or those latest commits. And then that way you're kind of giving it some time for either other people to run into issues, or maybe there's an article that comes out and then you're like, well, phew, I'm glad I didn't update to that latest one. There's plenty of issues with that too, but that is something that I'm hearing some people do. So unfortunately, these are the new things that we've got to do, but this is just how things are nowadays. We just got to change how we're trusting things and how we're kind of doing review on these things before we bring them in and use them as part of our infrastructure. Thanks.
Now, pivoting to encryption, researchers dropped a proof of concept exploit for a Windows BitLocker 0-day. Note, this isn't a remote attack. The attacker has to be physically holding your device like they did back in our grandparents' day before Wi-Fi and the horseless carriage and WAN. But if they are, they can manipulate the boot process or hardware interfaces to pull the decryption keys and read the disk in the clear. Realistically, this is a lost or lifted laptop story. Anyone with a corporate device that leaves the office, conference travelers, sales teams, your executives, moves from encrypted at rest, we're probably fine, to if the hardware goes missing, assume compromise. There's no known in the wild exploitation yet, just the POC, but POC to active is a short trip these days, especially with AI that's been helping with weaponization. So, Mike, what should organizations be doing now to harden against this physical access threat model?
Okay, so we got some BitLocker drama. This one is interesting. It's oh boy, somebody's got beef with Microsoft basically. This week somebody released a POC for BitLocker Vuln. This is on the heels of 2 other ones that were released last week. It's kind of like calling it all building up. I believe it's Yellow Key and Green Plasma is what they called the other ones. And then basically like there's a privilege escalation flaw as well. So the TLDR on this one is you can get some code onto a USB, plug it in, and get the system to reboot into recovery mode and bypass BitLocker. And it also like wipes the whatever's on the key, so it's kind of like very untraceable malware type thing. Not, like this is still a physical attack. You got to have access to the device. It's not great for sure. Breaks BitLocker, but it is something that they're working. I believe there's a patch for it. I think the more notable thing here is not that there's a bug in BitLocker. It's that this researcher has a huge beef with Microsoft and is basically going after BitLocker until they break it. So who knows? They might have some more stuff up their sleeves. They did report to have another POC that also bypasses some of the TPM stuff and like keys if you're doing things in, I guess, what you would consider the right way. So they said they didn't release that one yet because there's no patch and it would be unethical. But also they said that, no amount of money would make them sell these bugs on the internet. So, they're going to start dumping them is what's going to happen. They're going to dump them and patches are going to happen afterwards. So I would, BitLocker's in for some fun, I guess. So evaluate that as you need to with your policies and strategy as far as you using BitLocker for physical access protections.
Closing out, Microsoft's May patch Tuesday landed, and the headliners are 2 unauthenticated network remote code executions, both rated 9.8. Now, these are remote. CVE 2026-41089 is a stack-based buffer overflow in Windows NetLogin. CVE 2026-41096 is a heap-based overflow in Windows DNS. Either one lets an unauthenticated attacker run code over the network without user interaction, so on a domain controller, that is precisely as bad as it sounds. While you're patching Windows, check out the rest of the stack because Apple, Google, Mozilla, and Oracle all pushed major updates this week too. Firefox 150 alone follows 271 separate vulnerabilities. So, Mike, when teams are looking at a stack like this with multiple potentially actively exploited 0 days, how should they sequence their patch rollout?
Well, it seems to have happened. We are finally getting the output of some of the Project Mythos stuff, or just people using AI to find bugs. But, it definitely seems like we're seeing lots of vulns coming out and various amount of sleuthing on the internet to find out that, like, the researcher is attached to Anthropic or an org adjacent that has access to some pretty high-class models, and the bugs are starting to flow. So what are we seeing? There's bugs in Windows. There's, like, an Entra ID bug. There's, I think that one's like a forged token. There's a DNS client bug for Microsoft, which looks pretty rough. There's Firefox. There's a Chrome bug. Apple's got a few as well. There's a pretty nasty one in Safari. Seems like the trend is very much elevate to system permission or some sort of memory corruption, a lot of DOS stuff. But they are starting to come. Hot and heavy is not the right word. They're obviously not dropping all of them at once, but we are starting to see a trickle effect of, the companies using this, starting to patch the ones they have fixed, I guess. But you got to remember the compute on this stuff is insane, and it's not fast, and it's very expensive. So, they're going to crunch for a while before some of these, and especially some of the really bad ones, come out. But we are in a cycle now where patching is very important, and you buckle up and get ready to start patching faster, because a lot of the systems that we all use that are very common, that are in privileged positions, are going to start having very serious bugs exposed and patches for these bugs quite rapidly in the next couple of months, years, till we kind of exhaust the pool of easy stuff. So, yep, I would take my advice as evaluate your patching program, try to make it faster.
Thanks, Mike. And now the announcement. And I want to say that this is the rare exception that I'll make to plugging something about the Blumira platform in here, because it's a giant step forward for us and hopefully can make some of your lives a lot easier too. If you missed the full court press we did on Blumira's launch of Kindling this week, it's our new auto context engine and shifts from alerts from findings to case-based activity. I'm not going to try and cover all the details because I promised quick, but if you want to learn how to cut down on alerts by 90 to 98% without missing threats, and know that when you get an alert, it's something that actually needs your eyes on it now, I've got links in the description where you can learn some more. Internally, we talk a lot about our goal in the simplest terms. Be the security platform that doesn't break people, which shouldn't be a rare thing, but all too often is in practice for her security. This is the biggest leap forward in our efforts to keep delivering on that since Blumira's founding, and I would love to hear what you think if you get to try it. All right, that's it. Plug transmission ended. And that's the week. Patch widely, audit your NPM lock files, and treat any laptop that you can't physically account for as a credential rotation event. Until next time, stay safe out there.